Hello again, you are welcome to our project time management class. Project time management includes the processes that are required to ensure the timely delivery of project deliverables. We will be looking at 7 processes in all in project time management. We will begin with plan schedule management. We'll go on with define activities, sequence activities, estimate activity resources, estimate activity durations, develop schedule, and finally, control schedule. Most of the work that is done as regarding project time management is in the planning stage of the project. And then we have the last control process that is done during the monitoring and controlling stage of our project. To begin with, our first process, plan schedule management. This is the process of establishing the procedures for developing, managing, and controlling the project schedule. The inputs that we will make use of will include the project management plan, and we should understand that this is a big document that also includes a scope baseline where we have actually the description of the work that our project is supposed to deliver. We'll make use of our project charter, which includes even a summary schedule, high-level description of our schedule requirements. Our enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets are key references. A number of tools and techniques we could make use of to effectively plan schedule management. We could depend on experts for their insight, especially subject area experts that we could consult to inform our planning of schedule management. We could make use of various analytical techniques, example rolling wave planning, analyzing leads and lags, alternatives analysis, schedule performance review methods. Then of course, meetings, an important tool in project planning, is a way of bringing together various stakeholders to arrive at a plan, telling us how we should go with our schedule. Our output will be our schedule management plan. Now, with our schedule management plan in place, we could go on to define activities, which is the next process in schedule management. This is the process of identifying and listing the tasks that need to be performed to produce the project deliverables. This is achieved by decomposing the work packages identified during the create WBS process into smaller pieces of work. Now, the WBS is a part of scope management. Our inputs, we will make use of our schedule management plan, which we just developed. Our scope baseline, again, of course, the WBS, and these details are there in the scope baseline. Our enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. The main tool, as we mentioned earlier, is decomposition, which is subdividing the work packages from our WBS into smaller, more manageable components called activities. We'll make use of the rolling wave planning, which is a form of progressive elaboration planning, where work to be accomplished is planned in detail as and when there is enough information. We could make use of expert judgment. What we will come up with our outputs will include an activity list. That's a comprehensive list of what activities planned to be performed on the project. Then we could develop an activity attributes, giving more information about each activity. Then we could define our milestones. With our activity list and our milestone list in place, it is time for us to sequence activities. And this is a process of establishing logical relationships among the project activities. As usual, as our inputs, we will need our schedule management plan, which actually guides the whole schedule management process. Our activity list, which gives us the activities that we'll be sequencing, our activity attributes milestone list. Then we could refer also to our project scope statement because it will contain some product description, which will tell us the product characteristics that may affect activity sequencing. Then our enterprise environmental factors as well as organizational process assets are inputs to this process. What about tools and techniques for this process? A main technique we'll be using is a precedence diagramming method, PDM. It is also known as activity on node. So it's a method that makes use of boxes or rectangles referred to as nodes, and we interconnect them with lines to show the relationships between activities. Then we'll need to understand the dependencies that exist between our activities. We could make use of leads and lags. Leads meaning beginning activities earlier than planned. Lags mean delaying activities. When we sequence our activities, the diagram that will come up with if we were to use our precedence diagramming method is called a project schedule network diagram, and this is just a schematic display of the logical relationships among the project activities. Now when we have sequenced our activities and a few changes arise, it will be important to update our project documents. For instance, our activity list, our activity attributes, and the risk register, depending on the outcome of our activity sequencing. Now this is an example of using a precedence diagramming method to sequence activities. We see the letters A, B, C, and D representing activities, and then we see them interconnected with lines or arrows. And activities to the right are said to be successes, and activities to the left are predecessors. We could see activity A and B are not dependent on each other directly, so they could be done in parallel, but activity C needs to be completed before activity D can begin in a simple finish to start relationship. Our next time management process is estimate activity resources. And this is the process of determining the type as well as the quantities of resources that are required for the activities listed in the previous processes. Resources here include material, people, and equipment that are required to perform each activity. So we want to find out what quantity of material, what type of material, what quantity of people, what skill level of people, and which equipments are necessary to perform each activity that we have listed in our activity list. and which we have sequenced to form our network diagram. What inputs can we make reference to? Of course, we shouldn't forget our schedule management plan. It guides us throughout the whole time management process. Then, our activity list as well as activity attributes which give more information about each activity. Resource calendars will tell us when resources will be available and also their capabilities. A risk register will inform us of risk events that may impact resource selection and availability. Then our activity cost estimates. The cost of resources may also impact resource selection. Enterprise environmental factors, internal and external factors that could influence our project. Then organizational process assets, those are internal documentation, etc., that could aid in our project planning. Tools and techniques here could include expert judgment. Now, expert judgment is a necessary technique that we could always make use of in project planning. We always need the input of experts to make good planning decisions. Alternatives analysis, determining alternative methods of doing the same work. Published estimating data, it could be from the organization or from external sources. Then bottom-up estimating. When a piece of work is decomposed into smaller tasks, resources are estimated for these small tasks and then aggregated into a total quantity for each activity. Estimating that way gives us more accurate estimating. Bottom-up estimating is the name. Now, if we have project management software, it could be very useful, a tool for estimating. Our output will be our activity resource requirements. And when we have our activity resource requirements, we could form a resource breakdown structure which shows a hierarchical structure of the identified resources, and then they are grouped by category or by type. Then we could update a number of project documents. This could include activity list, the activity attributes, as well as the project resource calendars. When we have our activity resource estimates, we can now move on to estimate our activity durations. And this is the process of approximating the duration of each activity. A careful analysis of the work and the resource estimates. We'll make use, as inputs, we'll make use of our schedule management plan, activity list, activity attributes, then activity resource requirements. The output of just the previous process is key. The resource calendars, project scope statement, and here we are interested in assumptions, the constraints. You could make use of the risk register, the resource breakdown structure, and our enterprise environmental factors, as well as our organizational process assets. Tools and techniques that we could make use of. Again, we could depend on experts for their judgment. Various estimating techniques could be used here, including analogous estimating, that is using duration estimates from a previous similar project to predict the estimates for the current project. Parametric estimating uses mathematical formulae to establish relationship between historical data and other variables. We could make use of 3-point estimates. We could use group techniques such as brainstorming, nominal group technique, and Delphi technique. Then we can perform reserve analysis to cater for uncertainties we must add time reserves to our estimates. What is the output of estimate activity durations process? From its name, we will come up with activity duration estimates, the time that we have determined it will take to complete its activity that has been listed in the activity list. Then we could update necessary project documents. For example, we could update our activity attributes. That is, if we have more information about a given activity, then we could update our resource skill levels and resource availabilities in our resource calendars that have been developed for our project. The next process is to develop schedule, and this is the process of creating a calendar-based project schedule by using the activity sequences, the duration estimates, and the resource estimates that we have determined from the previous processes. And the main reason for all the previous processes is this process, develop schedule. This is our main focus of time management, to be able to arrive at a schedule for our project. The inputs that we could make reference to here, we can't forget our schedule management plan, we can't forget our activity list and its attributes. Now then, the project schedule network diagram from activity sequencing is key. Our activity resource requirements, our resource calendars, activity duration estimates, project scope statement, our risk register, our project staff assignments that specifies which resources are assigned to each activity. We could make use of resource breakdown structure. Then our enterprise environmental factors, as well as organizational process assets. Tools and techniques that could be employed here will need a schedule network analysis tool, and analytical techniques that we could employ could include a critical path method, critical chain method, resource leveling, what if scenario, applying leads and lags, and schedule compression. Then if we could have any other form of a scheduling tool, which could be an automated system that could help us to generate start and finish dates based on data that is input to the system. That tool will eliminate much of the manual work that we will need to do if we were to use the other analytical techniques mentioned earlier. Our outputs of the developed schedule process. Our main output there is a project schedule, and that is actually our main aim of time management. Once we have our project schedule and it is approved, it becomes our schedule baseline. Then in addition, we could come up with our schedule data, milestones, assumptions, and constraints. We could develop project calendars that will identify working days, shifts, and so on that are available for our project. Then we could update other necessary project documents, maybe activity resource requirements, activity attributes, or the risk register. Control schedule, the final process in time management, is the process of monitoring the status of the project to update the project progress and manage changes to the schedule baseline. What is the schedule baseline? The approved schedule. The inputs here will include a project management plan, which is a bigger plan that contains even the schedule baseline and then the schedule management plan. Now our project schedule is what we want to control. Our work performance information, maybe information about project progress and so on. Then we could make use of organizational process assets. Schedule control policies, procedures, and guidelines are all examples of organizational process assets that could serve as inputs to the control schedule process. Tools and techniques that we could make use of. We can do performance reviews, schedule performance such as actual start and finish dates, percent complete, remaining duration for work in progress, measured and analyzed, are all form part of the performance reviews. Could do variance analysis, finding the difference between the actual and planned. Project management software could be used. We could employ resource leveling, optimizing the distribution of work among resources. What about what if scenarios? What if? What if? A key question to always ask on projects. Adjusting leads and lags. Could use schedule compression tools. And then again, when we have it, an automated scheduling tool could be used to control our schedule. The outputs of control schedule. We will come up with work performance measurements. Then we could update our organizational process assets. For instance, with newly learned lessons, and this could be useful for projects in the future. When we find out that things are not going according to plan, there could be a need for change requests, and necessarily there will be a need to update our project management plan with the new changes that we are making to our project. And other project documents, example the schedule data and the project schedule, could be updated whenever there has been a change that has been identified or approved. That is all for our time management class. Thank you.